Josh Duggar from 19 Kids and Counting, charged with having child pornography. A federal grand jury indicted Duggar, saying he knowingly received images of children under the age of 12.
The scariest part about every person on this list isn't what they did. It's that somebody knew and said nothing. And while all of these were still happening, they were still winning awards, signing deals, and showing up on your TV screen, and we even defended some of them in the comment section till the verdict came back. I need you to stay with me for this one, because this isn't just a list of celebrities who got caught. This is a story about how long it takes for the truth to matter when the person hiding it is famous enough. And what I keep coming back to, what honestly kept me up putting this together, is how many people had to stay silent, or be silenced, for each of these men to keep going as long as they did. We're counting down 7 names. By number 1, you're not going to be shocked. You're going to be angry, and honestly, you should be. If you were a teenager during the late 90s or early 2000s, then you definitely remember Danny Masterson. He played Stephen Hyde on the 70s show, and everyone knew him as that effortlessly cool and too smart for the room kid. He was watched every day on every TV by millions of people for 8 seasons. But everything changed for him in 2023 when he was convicted of sexually assaulting 2 women in 2003 at his Hollywood Hills home. This crime took over 2 decades to reach a courtroom. And believe me when I tell you that the delay wasn't accidental. Prosecutors argued that as a high-ranking member of the Church of Scientology, Danny had used his status to silence every woman who had ever come forward. 3 victims even said they were discouraged by the church from going to the police. The jury heard it all, and on May 31st, 2023, convicted him on 2 of 3 counts of forcible rape. A 3rd count resulted in a hung jury. Judge Charlene Olmedo sentenced him to 30 years to life in prison on the 7th of September, 2023, meaning that he will not be eligible for parole for more than 25 years.
The women claim Masterson, who starred in that 70s show from 2003 to 2006, gave them drinks that made them woozy or pass out before he violently raped them.
Danny was later admitted to North Kern State Prison in California in December 2023, but he was transferred to the California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo. His lawyers have filed appeals. His wife, actress Bijou Phillips, filed for divorce weeks after sentencing, ending a marriage of nearly 12 years. Harvey was known by many as not just a producer, but a gatekeeper. He co-founded Miramax, and he later opened the Weinstein Company. Almost any good movie you can remember from the 90s and 2000s had its fingerprints on it. From Pulp Fiction to Good Will Hunting, he produced it all. But his life took a very drastic turn in October 2017, when the New York Times revealed that more than 80 women had accused him of sexual harassment and sexual assault for at least 3 decades. What shocked people more was how consistent these women were in their details and how devastating the scenes were. He was later arrested in May 2018 and was convicted by a New York jury in 2020 of criminal sexual act and sexual assault in the 3rd degree, sentencing him to 23 years. But Harvey's story does not end there, because he was later convicted in Los Angeles in 2022 of sexual assault for crimes against a second victim, and it added an extra 16 years to his sentence. And however, his New York conviction was overturned on procedural grounds in April 2024. And while this shocked everyone, there was a retrial in 2025, which resulted in a new conviction on 1 count of criminal sexual act.
Harvey Weinstein is accused of 3 charges. 1 is a rape charge, and there are 2 charges of criminal sexual assault against 2 different women.
He remains in prison on the California sentence alone while legal proceedings continue. Harvey is currently 72 years old, and he has been held in various facilities. According to reports, his health is deteriorating. His case didn't just end a career, it started a movement. The hashtag #MeToo movement, which was introduced by activist Tarana Burke, went global within weeks of the reporting of this incident. This is where it gets complicated in the most uncomfortable way, because R. Kelly was one of the most gifted R&B artists in his generation. With hits like I Believe I Can Fly and Ignition Remix, he sold more than 75 million records worldwide and won Grammys. But his downfall started in 2019, when accusations started circling. These accusations started in the early 1990s when Tiffany Hawkins alleged that Kelly had sexual contact with her when she was 15. The videotape of these accusations surfaced in 2002, and it led to a child-adult film trial that ended with his acquittal in 2008. This verdict stunned a lot of observers, but it did not stop the music industry from moving. But when the Lifetime documentary Surviving R. Kelly was aired in January 2019, something shifted, and the women who had been silent for so long finally felt their voices being heard. Just like that, investigations were reopened. And in 2021, a federal jury in Brooklyn convicted Kelly on 9 counts: racketeering, sex trafficking, Mann Act violations, for running what prosecutors called a criminal enterprise built around his fame. The enterprise used its entourage to identify, recruit, isolate, and abuse the women and girls, some as young as 14. In 2022, a second federal jury in Chicago convicted him on child abuse charges for abuse he filmed in the late 1990s. He was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison in June 2022, and he even received an additional 20 years in the Chicago court in February 2023 for child-adult film. He will not be released until at least December 2045, when he will be 78 years old. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear his appeal in 2024. He is currently serving his sentence at FCY Butner Medium 1 in North Carolina, a federal correctional institution. Robson de Souza was one of the most untouchable Brazilian players of his generation. He had the skill, he had the charisma, he had everything, and he lost it all in 2013. On that fateful night of January 22, 2013, a 23-year-old Albanian woman was celebrating her birthday at a Milan nightclub, and Robin Ho was there. According to Italian court findings, she was plied with alcohol until she was rendered unconscious, and then gang-raped by Robin Ho and 5 other Brazilian men. Robin Ho was convicted in Italy in 2017, but the case took nearly a decade to fully exhaust all Italian appeals. During that time, Italian prosecutors got their hands on some audio recordings in which Robin Ho was heard negotiating the night with associates. His defense maintained the encounter was consensual, but the courts at every level disagreed. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison. But this is where the story gets complicated. Brazil does not extradite its own citizens, so by the time Robin Ho was convicted, he had already returned home, and Italy had no mechanism to compel his physical return. That means that for years, he was a convicted rapist who was living freely in Santos, outside São Paulo. But then, Italy formally requested that Brazil enforce the sentence on its own soil. And that was when the Brazilian Superior Court of Justice took the case, and on March 20th, 2024, they voted 9-2 to validate the Italian conviction and order him to begin serving his sentence immediately. Currently, Robin Ho is serving his 9-year sentence at the Tremembe Penitentiary in São Paulo State. Marion Hugh Knight Jr., who is commonly known as Shug, co-founded Death Row Records in 1991, and he contributed so much to American music. From Dr. Dre to Snoop Dogg to Tupac Shakur, Shug was a name in American music. In fact, for a specific window of time, nobody in hip-hop was more powerful. But that power did not last for long because the decline of his record studio started with years of financial mismanagement, Knight's own repeated legal troubles, and the deaths of Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G. all hollowed out the empire he had built. But what put him in prison for the rest of his most productive years was what happened on January 29, 2015, outside Tam's Burgers in Compton. On that day, Marion was on set at the NWA biopic Straight Outta Compton, and he was turned away from meeting Dr. Dre and Ice Cube. A confrontation started, and surveillance footage showed Knight's red Ford F-150 reversing, striking Clee Sloan, then lurching forward and running over Terry Carter, a 55-year-old local businessman and longtime associate of Knight. Carter died, and Sloan was seriously injured. Knight fled the scene but turned himself in the next day, and before long, he was charged with murder. On October 4, 2018, a judge sentenced Knight to 28 years in state prison, 22 years for the manslaughter itself, plus an additional 6 years triggered by the 3 strikes law, which applied because of his prior felony convictions. He will not be eligible for parole until October 2034, when he will be 69 years old. Joseph Allen Maldonado Passage, Joe Exotic to everyone who encountered him, was, before the Netflix cameras arrived, the owner and operator of the GW Zoo in Wynwood, Oklahoma, a private big cat park with hundreds of animals on the property. He was a showman in the most theatrical sense. His problems started in 2019 when he was convicted on 17 federal charges. He got 2 counts of hiring hitmen to kill Carol Baskin, including an instance where the person he hired was actually an undercover FBI agent. And he also got 15 counts of federal wildlife crimes, including the illegal killing of 5 of his own tigers, falsifying records, and violating the Endangered Species Act and the Lacey Act. Joe was originally sentenced to 22 years in federal prison in January 2020. In July 2021, an appeals court ruled that the 2 murder-for-hire counts against the 2 different alleged hitmen had been wrongly treated as separate offenses by the trial court and ordered a resentencing. On January 28, 2022, a federal judge resentenced him to 21 years, a reduction of only 1 year. He will not be eligible for parole until he has served roughly 85% of his sentence. His projected release date, accounting for good time credits, currently sits around 2036. As of late 2025, Joe Exotic is held at the Federal Medical Center in Fort Worth, Texas. If you were a huge fan of cable television in the late 2000s and 2010s, you probably know the Duggars. Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar were the parents of 19 children. Yes, you heard that right. And they soon became the centerpiece of TLC's 19 Kids and Counting. Now get this. The show was built entirely on the image of a devout, wholesome Christian family who were living by their convictions in Exotic, Arkansas. Josh Duggar was their eldest son. So imagine people's shock when Touch Weekly published in May 2015 police records which revealed that Josh Duggar had molested 5 young girls between 2002 and 2003. The shocking part? He did this when he was 14 years old, and 4 of those girls were his own sisters. But that is not the most mouth-opening part, because the reports show that Jim Bob, the dad, knew about this, and he waited for an entire year before reporting it to the authorities. And that when he did, he sent Josh to a program run by a family friend. Not a licensed counselor. No charges were ever filed because the statute of limitations had expired. TLC canceled the show. Josh issued a public apology, but in April 2021, federal agents with Homeland Security investigations arrested Josh Duggar at his used car dealership in Springdale, Arkansas. Investigators had traced an IP address downloading child sexual abuse material, including images of children as young as 7, and videos depicting abuse that an HSI agent testified was among the most disturbing he had seen in his entire career, to a computer at that dealership. In December 2021, a federal jury convicted him on both counts, receiving and possessing child sexual abuse material. He was sentenced in May 2022 to 12 years and 7 months in federal prison, plus 20 years of supervised release. After his sentence ends, he will be a registered sex offender for life and will not be permitted unsupervised contact with any minor, including his own 7 children. He is currently serving his sentence at FCY Segoville. For these 7 celebrities, the talent and fame were very real, but so was the harm done, and so were the people who paid the price for it long before any courtroom got involved. But I want to hear from you. Which case on this list genuinely surprised you the most? Not the conviction itself, but the details behind it? Drop it in the comments. And if there's a name you think belongs on this list that we didn't cover, you already know what to do. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next video.